He gave everything to his family, until life struck hard and he lost his job. His wife Tonia called him a failure and walked away with pride, chasing a richer man and a so-called soft life. But what happens when the same man she abandoned becomes the one man she can't reach anymore? This is not just a story about love and betrayal. It's about grace, growth, and the kind of comeback that silences every voice that once laughed. You won't believe how this ends. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and watch till the end. The alarm rang like it always did at 5 a.m., but this morning felt different. Michael sat up slowly on the edge of the bed, staring at the floor in silence. His wife, Tonia, rolled over and sighed loudly, clearly irritated by the sound of the alarm. "You're not even going to work today," she muttered under her breath. Michael didn't respond. What could he say? Just 2 days ago, after 12 loyal years at his engineering firm, he had been called into the office and handed a brown envelope. Downsizing. Cost-cutting. "Thank you for your service." That's all they said. Now he was jobless. At 42, with 2 daughters. And a wife who suddenly looked at him like he was dirt on her shoe. He turned to look at her. "Good morning," he said quietly. Tonia didn't answer. Instead, she stood up, tied her scarf, and walked out of the room. Their youngest daughter, Naomi, just 6 years old, ran into the room moments later, clutching her teddy bear. "Daddy, are you not going to work today?" Michael forced a smile and lifted her onto his lap. "No, princess, Daddy is staying home with you today." "Yay!" she shouted, wrapping her arms around him. It was the only joy he felt all morning. By noon, Tonia had already made 2 phone calls. One was to her friend Cynthia, who always had something to say. The second was to her mother. "I can't stay here and suffer with a man who can't provide," she said loudly while standing in the kitchen, knowing Michael could hear her. He heard every word. That night the house was cold, not because of the weather, but because of the silence between them. Tonia barely looked at him. She served herself but ignored Michael and the children. It hurt, but he said nothing. The next morning Tonia stood by the door with 2 bags packed. Gina and Naomi sat on the couch, confused. "Where are you going?" Michael asked, stepping into the living room in his singlet and trousers. "I'm going somewhere I'll be respected," she said. "Not this place where dreams die." "You're leaving your daughters behind?" "They'll be fine with you," Tonia snapped. "Gina is old enough to look after the small one. And besides, they're girls. They'll survive." Naomi stood up and walked toward her mother. "Mommy, I want to go with you," she whispered. But Tonia didn't even look back. "You'll thank me later," she said. Walking out the door without hugging either child. The door slammed. And just like that, Michael was alone with 2 daughters. And a silence that swallowed the whole house. He didn't cry. Not in front of them. He held them close, kissed the tops of their heads, and whispered, "Daddy's going to be okay, you'll see." But even he wasn't sure if that was true. That night, Michael sat outside the small rented apartment. His thoughts were heavy. His hands trembled as he scrolled through his phone, only to see a post on Tonia's Instagram. A picture of her in a new city, sunglasses on, luggage beside her. New beginnings. Friends were already commenting, "Soft girl era. You made the right choice. Proud of you, sis." He turned off his phone. It was just him now. Him and 2 little girls who refused to let go. The house hadn't felt the same since the door slammed shut behind her. Michael sat in the living room, the early morning sun leaking through the curtains, casting long shadows across the floor. Gina was still sitting where she had been when her mother walked out, quiet, still, staring at the space by the door. Naomi had fallen asleep on his lap after crying herself into silence. Her little chest rose and fell gently. Michael hadn't moved in hours. He couldn't. He just sat there, blinking slowly, arms wrapped protectively around his daughters. No part of him believed this would happen. Not like this, not after everything. He replayed it over and over again, Tonia's voice, sharp like a blade. I'm going somewhere I'll be respected, not this place where dreams die. She had looked him in the eye and still left the girls behind like forgotten shoes. Even when Naomi begged to go with her, she didn't flinch. And now, the silence in the house was louder than any shout. He had no money, no job, no clue what tomorrow would bring. But he had Gina and Naomi, and he was going to protect them with everything he had left. The following week was brutal. Michael tried calling old contacts for work. Nothing. Most didn't pick up. One told him to hang in there. Another said, sorry bro, economy's rough. So he started doing menial jobs, cleaning gutters, washing cars. Eventually, he found a construction site nearby that needed laborers. It paid 2,000 naira per day. It wasn't much, but it was something. Each morning he packed small bags of rice and groundnut oil for Gina to cook after school. He bathed Naomi before leaving, combed her hair, and walked them both to school before heading to the site. By 10 a.m., the sun would be scorching. By 3 p.m., his shirt would be soaked through. Cement powder clung to his skin. His hands, once smooth from years of desk work, now bore calluses and cracks. He often ate nothing until the night, but he didn't complain. Meanwhile, Tonia was living the life she had always dreamed of. Stanley, the man she ran to, was wealthy, polished, and generous. He showered her with gifts and trips. Within weeks, they were in Seychelles, sipping cocktails by a beach resort. Her skin glowed, her nails were always done, and her laughter rang loud in Instagram stories. She posted everything, matching outfits with Stanley on a yacht, dinner at a floating restaurant in Mauritius, a luxury hotel room with rose petals on the bed. Captions like, "This is what peace looks like. New life, who this?" Her followers gushed, "Hot girl in her era. God, when? Your ex must be dying inside." But Michael wasn't dying. He was surviving. He was bathing his daughters in the evening, washing their school uniforms by hand, teaching Gina maths at night. Some nights, Naomi would fall asleep on his chest while he quietly hummed lullabies to stop her from asking questions he couldn't answer. He didn't own a generator anymore, had to sell it to pay for medical tests when Naomi caught a fever. They used candles and rechargeable lamps. He turned off the fridge to save electricity. He walked instead of taking Okada. Yet every time he looked at his daughters, he knew one thing: they were worth it. And somewhere across the ocean, Tonia had no idea that the life she had built was balancing on lies. Because Stanley, the perfect man, had secrets, big ones. Secrets that would bring her dream crashing down like a house of cards. And when that day came, she would wish she had stayed. Michael woke up before the sun, his body aching like it had been beaten. He had no alarm anymore. Hunger had taken its place. He quietly got out of bed so he wouldn't wake Gina and Naomi, then stepped outside. The cool morning air hit his skin as he squatted by a bowl of water to bathe from. They hadn't had running water for days. The girls didn't complain. They had grown used to silence. By 7 a.m., he had dropped them off at school and was walking toward the construction site. His shirt clung to his back, the same brown trousers he wore yesterday, already stiff with cement dust. He didn't care. He was surviving. At the site, the foreman shouted orders, and Michael joined the line of men lifting heavy blocks from the delivery truck. Each block pulled at his back like it wanted to snap his spine in half. His palms had started to tear open. The blisters popped with every grip. By noon, sweat ran down his face like tears. His legs shook under him, but he didn't stop. Some of the other workers laughed behind his back. "Na big man way full be this oh," one whispered. "See as suffer humble am," another added. He heard them. He always did. But he said nothing. Michael was known in the area. Once the man who drove a car, wore ironed shirts, and paid his children's school fees up front. Now, he carried blocks and begged the neighbor to buy him Gary on credit. One day, as he was mixing cement in the corner, he heard someone call his name. Michael? He turned. It was Charles, an old colleague from his office job. Charles stood frozen, wearing a crisp white shirt and holding his phone. Is this really you? Michael managed to smile. Yes, this is me. He could tell Charles was trying not to look shocked, but he was. And before Michael could stop him, Charles had taken a photo, pretending to be checking his WhatsApp. Michael turned away quickly, shame burning his skin worse than the sun. That evening, he returned home to find Gina struggling to light the charcoal stove outside. Naomi was coughing inside, wrapped in a wrapper and lying on the floor. The heat from the day hadn't gone down, but her body felt cold. He touched her forehead. She was burning up. He took a deep breath and grabbed his wallet. Only 800 naira left. He had to choose, food or paracetamol. He chose the drug. Gina didn't complain when he gave her and Naomi plain pap for dinner. "Daddy, are you not eating?" she asked. Michael smiled. "I ate at work." He lied. He hadn't eaten all day. Later that night, as the girls slept, Michael stepped outside and sat on the cement blocks near the door. He stared into the dark, head bowed. He wanted to scream, punch something, ask God why. Instead, he cried. Not loudly, just quiet tears that fell onto his dusty hands. Was he a failure? Why did she leave him when he needed her most? He wiped his face and stood to go inside. And that's when Gina came out, holding a folded piece of paper. "I made this in school," she said, handing it to him. It was a drawing of a man holding hands with two girls, both smiling. On top she had written, "My daddy is my hero." Michael stared at the paper. Something broke in him. And something was rebuilt in the same moment. He picked her up and held her tightly. "Thank you," he whispered. "Thank you for not leaving." She nodded against his chest. Inside the room, Naomi turned in her sleep, murmuring, "Daddy." Michael smiled through the tears. He was bruised, broken, barely breathing. But somehow he was still standing, and soon the world would remember his name again. The day Naomi coughed blood into her hand, Michael panicked. He rushed her to the local clinic, holding her close like glass that might shatter. The doctor said it was a throat infection, made worse by dehydration and exposure to dust. He gave her a shot, prescribed antibiotics, and told Michael she needed proper rest, clean water, and fruit. Michael left the clinic with a folded prescription, an empty wallet, and a head full of worry. That evening he sat alone on the floor, watching Gina fan Naomi to sleep. The light from their rechargeable lamp flickered, casting long shadows on the wall. Everything felt heavy. He leaned against the wall and made a decision. He was going to find Tonia, not to fight, not for pride, but for the girls, the daughters she abandoned without a second thought. He scrolled through his phone, found a number he hadn't dialed in months. Cynthia, Tonia's closest friend. He called. She answered. "Michael," she said, confused. "I need a favor," he said calmly. "Please, just give me her address. I'm not coming to cause drama. I just want to talk. For the children." There was a long pause. "You sure this is a good idea?" "I'm not sure of anything anymore," he replied. "But my girls deserve a mother. That's all I'm asking for." Cynthia didn't speak again. Then she said softly, "I'll text it to you. Don't say it came from me." The line went dead. Michael stared at his screen. The message came in seconds later. Block C, Flat 2B, Royal Estate. The next morning, Michael wore his cleanest shirt. He washed his face twice, combed his hair, and sprayed a little perfume he had left from a birthday gift 3 years ago. Then he borrowed 1,000 euros for transport and used 300 naira to buy a small fruit basket. He wanted to go with peace. Royal estate was quiet, clean, rich. Too clean. The security man looked at him suspiciously, but after mentioning Tonia's name, he was let in. Block C, flat 2B. Michael stood before the door, hand trembling slightly as he knocked. He held the fruit basket tightly, like it was the last piece of dignity he had. The door opened, and there she was, Tonia. Her hair was perfectly styled, her silk robe shimmered in the light. She held a wineglass in her hand and looked like someone who had never known the weight of poverty. She blinked in shock. "Michael?" He cleared his throat. "Hi, Tonia. Please, can I talk to you?" Her eyes narrowed. "How did you find me?" "I just want 5 minutes," he said, voice low. "It's about Gina and Naomi. They miss you. Naomi's sick. I can't do this alone." Before she could reply, a deep male voice came from inside. "Babe, who's that?" Then he appeared, tall, muscular, shirtless, holding a drink and adjusting a gold chain around his neck. He walked up behind her and wrapped an arm around her waist. Michael stared. His hand loosened. The fruit basket nearly dropped. The man looked him over. "You good?" Tonia looked at Michael and said coldly, "He was just leaving." Michael stood there for one more second, just one. Then he nodded. Without a word, he turned and walked away. Outside, the sun was cruel. He didn't look back. He didn't cry. He just kept walking, the fruit basket swinging at his side. That evening, when he returned home, Gina was already bathing Naomi with warm water. They both looked up as he entered. He forced a smile. Gina didn't ask questions. Michael went to the corner of the room and sat down. Then he whispered to himself, "She's gone." He took one long breath and said quietly, "Now it's just us, and we're going to win, no matter what." The sun was unforgiving that afternoon. Michael's shirt clung to his back, soaked in sweat and dust from the construction site. He carried a nylon bag of tomatoes and onions, dinner for the girls. His steps were slow, heavy and tired. As he crossed the junction near their street, a black SUV rolled up beside him. The windows were tinted. The engine hummed like a beast. Then the passenger window rolled down slowly. "Tch!" A familiar voice scoffed. "Is that Michael?" He turned. It was Tonia. She sat in the front seat, sunglasses on, music playing softly in the background. Her nails sparkled, her skin glowed. Her lips curled into a wicked smile. "Well, well," she said, stepping out. "See who's walking under the sun like a market boy." Michael stood still, holding his bag tightly. Tonia circled him slowly, like she was inspecting a broken statue. "This is your life now?" she asked, laughing. "So you weren't even pretending when you begged me at the estate?" Still, Michael said nothing. She leaned in, her voice low but sharp. "Look at you. No car, no job, no respect. I thank God I left when I did. I'd be on this street now, frying a kara." She stepped back and looked him up and down one more time. "You're not a ma, you're a memory, a bad one." Michael turned away quietly. As he walked, her voice followed him like a whip. "Loser, you're not a man, you're a lesson." He didn't look back, not once. 2 days later, the scene was completely different. Tonia was in an airport lounge, sipping champagne, snapping pictures with Stanley beside her. He wore designer sunglasses and held her waist like a prize. Her social media lit up. "Mauritius, loading, my man said pack your bags, we're leaving this stress behind." She posted a reel, her in a red bikini by the beach, sipping coconut juice and laughing. Another showed her in a 5-star restaurant with a view of the ocean. Soft life only. If I had stayed with him, I'd still be boiling water with firewood. The comments rolled in. "You're glowing, sis. Your ex must be punching the air." This is what winning looks like. But no one mentioned the two little girls she left behind. No one asked if she ever looked back. Back home, Michael sat outside their apartment, fanning Naomi gently. She had finished her last dose of medication and needed a refill. He opened his wallet, 3 crumpled 100 naira notes and a few coins. He sighed and looked at the sky. Gina came out holding a paper from school. "Daddy, they said we need to pay for school project. 3,500 naira. He looked at her, and for a moment he said nothing. Then he reached into his pocket, pulled out a folded drawing, the one Gina made of him holding her and Naomi. At the top it still read, "My daddy is my hero." He held the paper to his chest. "I'm not a loser," he whispered. "I'm a father, and I'm not done." He stood up and picked up his phone. Tomorrow he would call a man at the site who once mentioned needing someone reliable to help with deliveries. It wasn't much, but it was a start. And while some drove around mocking others, some walked their way to redemption. Michael sat in the dim corner of the room, watching Naomi sleep restlessly on the mat beside him. The night was warm, the air sticky with heat and silence. Gina was reading by the rechargeable lamp, her back slightly hunched, her eyes tired. There was no more medicine. The fever had dropped, but the infection could return. Michael counted the coins in his pocket again, not enough for the next dose. His eyes drifted to the drawing Gina had made. "My daddy is my hero." Something stirred inside him. He reached for his phone and scrolled through the contact list until he found the number, Foreman Musa. His thumb hovered over the call button. He hadn't spoken to the man in weeks, but he remembered overhearing something at the construction site. Someone looking for a reliable person to work at a building depot. He exhaled and pressed call. The line rang, once, twice, then connected. "Hello? Good evening, sir. It's Michael, from the site." "Oh, Michael, how you day?" "I day manage, sir. I wanted to ask, you mentioned someone was looking for a storekeeper or assistant at a depot." There was a pause. "You still looking for work?" "Yes, sir. Anything. I'm ready." Another pause, then, "Come to Alhaji Bello's depot tomorrow morning. He asked for someone reliable. I gave him your name." Michael blinked, surprised. "You did? You never gave me wahala, even when others complained." "I noticed. Go early." Michael's hand tightened around the phone. "Thank you, sir. I won't disappoint you." The next morning, Michael dressed carefully. He washed his best shirt the night before and ironed it using a pot of hot water. Gina helped shine his shoes with the side of an old sponge. Naomi watched from the mat, her small face hopeful. Before leaving, he hugged them both tightly. "Pray for Daddy," he said. Gina nodded. "God will help you. I already told him." At the depot, Michael was led into a small office by a young boy. Behind the desk sat a man in his 50s, stocky and stern-faced, reading a file. "You're Michael?" "Yes, sir." "Sit down." Michael lowered himself onto the chair, his back straight, palms sweating. The man asked just one question. "Can I trust you?" Michael didn't give a long speech. He simply said, "I have 2 daughters. I've worked in offices and carried blocks with these hands, but I've never stolen, and I won't start now." The man nodded slowly. "You'll start tomorrow. 2-week probation. 18,000 weekly. If I hear good things, you'll stay." Michael stood up and bowed slightly. "Thank you, sir." That evening, he came home with 2 meat pies and a cold bottle of drink. Gina ran to the door, her eyes wide. "Daddy!" He handed the snacks to her and Naomi. "What happened?" she asked. "I start work tomorrow," he said, smiling softly. Naomi clapped. "Yay!" They sat on the mat, eating slowly, as if the meal was a treasure. For the first time in months, there was laughter in the house. Thousands of miles away in Mauritius, Tonia was on a yacht with Stanley, her skin glowing in the sun. A waiter poured champagne as she posed for a photo, Her feet dipped in a pool of rose petals. She posted the photo instantly. If I had stayed with him, I'd still be boiling water with firewood. Mauritius with my man. Soft life activated. But behind the perfect picture, unease was growing. Stanley had been disappearing for hours. She checked his wallet while he showered and found a receipt for 2 rings. But she'd only seen one. She said nothing, but her heart skipped. Something didn't feel right. Back in Nigeria, Michael sat outside under the stars. Gina joined him quietly. "You're starting to smile again," she whispered. He looked at her and said, "It's the beginning of something. I don't know what yet, but I feel it." And in that moment, something shifted, a small, silent promise to never go back. The depot buzzed with activity. Wheelbarrows rolled past. Cement bags were stacked to the ceiling. Drivers honked impatiently outside the gate. In the middle of it all stood Michael, clipboard in hand, sweat on his brow, but a calm, confident look on his face. He had become the heartbeat of the place. Customers asked for him. Workers respected him. Alhaji Bello had extended his probation and increased his pay before the 2 weeks even ended. "You run this place like it's your own," Bello said one afternoon. "Next month, I'm making you depot supervisor." Michael bowed slightly. "Thank you, sir. I won't disappoint you." And he meant it. Each evening he came home with something different. Yams, toiletries, sometimes suya for the girls. The light in Gina's eyes had returned. Naomi laughed more now. Life still wasn't perfect, but it was no longer hopeless. One hot afternoon, as Michael was cross-checking delivery records, a familiar voice echoed from behind him. "Excuse me, I'm looking for—" The voice trailed off. Michael turned. Cynthia, Tonia's friend. The same one who had texted him Tonia's address weeks ago. She stood frozen, her mouth slightly open, sunglasses perched on her head, fanning herself slowly. "Michael?" He gave a small nod. "Good afternoon, Cynthia." She blinked like she was seeing a ghost. "My goodness, you work here?" He nodded again. "Yes, I'm the supervisor here now." Cynthia looked around at the way the workers obeyed him, the clean records on his table, the branded polo shirt with the depot logo, the sharp pen clipped to his chest. This wasn't the same man who had begged at Tonia's gate. This was someone else. "Wow," she said quietly. "You look good, strong." Michael smiled faintly. "God is helping us." She hesitated, then added softly, "She wouldn't believe this. Not in a million years." Michael didn't ask who she was. He simply turned to shout an instruction at one of the boys unloading sandbags. Voice steady, back straight. Cynthia watched him for a few seconds more, then she walked away. But not before secretly snapping a photo of him from behind. Later that evening, Cynthia was at Tonia's apartment, sipping wine and scrolling through her gallery. "You won't believe who I ran into today," she said casually. Tonia rolled her eyes. "If it's about one of your exes again." "No, it's about yours." Tonia froze. "What?" "Michael. I saw him today." Tonia burst out laughing. "And what was he doing? Selling plantain on the roadside?" Cynthia shook her head. "He's a depot supervisor. Big building materials depot. Looks sharp, clean. The man was giving orders like a boss." Tonia's laughter faded. "Supervisor?" She scoffed. "Please, it's probably one small kiosk he's managing." "I'm serious, Tonia. I was shocked. He looks different, like a real man." Tonia waved her off, but her hands trembled slightly. That night, long after Cynthia had left, Tonia sat alone in the dark, scrolling through her phone. She opened the photo Cynthia had sent. Michael. Standing tall, clipboard in hand, workers moving around him. He was smiling. Not a fake, tired smile, but a confident one. She stared for a long time. Her heart beat faster. "No," she whispered to herself. "No, it can't be." Meanwhile, back at home, Michael was helping Naomi brush her teeth while Gina folded her uniform for school. The light bulb flickered, but the room felt bright. Later, as the girls slept, Michael opened his Bible and quietly prayed. "Thank you for bringing us this far. I'm still on the ground, but I know you're not done." Upstairs, in a luxury flat paid for by another man, Tonia was no longer smiling. Her fingers hovered over her phone. She didn't dial. She just stared at the screen, wondering if she had made the greatest mistake of her life. Tonia stood in front of the mirror, frowning. Stanley had barely said a word to her in 3 days. He now slept in the guest room, claimed to be busy at work, and left his second phone face down whenever she was near. His tone had changed too, short, defensive, and increasingly cold. "Why are you always in my space?" he snapped that morning when she asked if everything was okay. "You think this house is yours?" That was the 3rd time he had snapped that week. She stared at the breakfast she had made for him, untouched. Later that afternoon, she found a receipt tucked inside one of his jacket pockets while doing laundry. It read, "Hotel La d'Azur, 1-night suite, paid 92,000 Nero. Dated just 2 days ago." Tonia's stomach tightened. He had told her he was on a business trip in Abeokuta. She said nothing, but the silence inside her was screaming. What she didn't know was that Stanley's wife had just landed in Nigeria. After 3 months abroad with the kids, she came back to a shocking update from the estate security guard. "Madam, another woman has been living in your house since you traveled." The woman didn't scream. She didn't panic. She picked up her phone, called 2 of her closest friends, and made a plan. The next day, Tonia was lounging in the living room, wearing Stanley's robe, painting her nails, when the front door flung open. 3 women stormed in. "Where is she?" one of them shouted. Tonia barely had time to stand up before the first slap landed. "Are you mad? You entered my house and started living like Queen Mother." Tonia's wig was pulled off her head. Another broomstick struck her back. Slippers rained down on her, she screamed. Stanley came running out of the bathroom in a towel, confused. His wife turned to him and threw his phone against the wall. "You brought shame to this house. Today, both of you are leaving with the same disgrace." Neighbors gathered outside. Phones were out, videos were recording. Tonia, now barefoot, was dragged by her arm and thrown out of the gate. Her designer bag was tossed after her. Stanley was next. His clothes were flung from the upstairs balcony, scattering across the lawn. "Come and carry your man," the wife shouted to Tonia, "but not in my house." The gate slammed shut, the lock clicked, and the crowd roared. Tonia called the only person she could think of, Cynthia. By the time she arrived at Cynthia's house, her face was swollen, her voice hoarse, and her pride buried in the dust. Cynthia opened the door slowly, shocked. "What happened to you?" Tonia fell onto the couch. "Please, let me stay here, just for a few days." Cynthia didn't ask many questions. She simply sighed and pointed toward the guest room. "No noise, no drama, just rest." Tonia nodded weakly, but inside her heart, regret was clawing its way out. Back in town, Michael was sealing deals. Alhaji Bello had promoted him to assistant depot manager. He now handled both stock movement and cash reporting. Customers asked for him by name. Other branches called him for advice. He bought Gina new shoes for school and surprised Naomi with a new mattress and standing fan. They squealed and danced around the room. Even Mama Peace, the neighbor who once fed them on credit, received a quiet brown envelope from him with a soft "thank you." Michael still wore his old wristwatch, still took bikes to work, still knelt to pray every night. But everything about him had changed. He now walked with dignity, he smiled with peace, and most importantly, he had nothing left to prove. Back at Cynthia's place, Tonia sat by the window, watching the night crawl by. Her phone buzzed. It was a video of her being flogged. Someone had uploaded it on TikTok. Caption: Side chick breakfast. She moved in, but the wife came back. She turned off her phone and buried her face in the pillow. Outside, the world was laughing. Inside, her soul was silent. It was a quiet Monday morning when Michael was called into Alhaji Bello's office. He assumed it was for the monthly stock report. He had his notebook ready and a pen in his shirt pocket. But when he walked in, Alhaji Bello was seated calmly behind the desk, hands clasped, smiling faintly. The kind of smile that meant something bigger was coming. "Michael," he said, gesturing to the chair opposite him, "sit down." Michael obeyed, confused. "I won't waste your time," Alhaji continued. "You've been more than a worker to me. You've carried this depot like it was your own. You brought order where there was chaos, and more than that, you reminded me what honesty looks like." Michael nodded, still unsure what was happening. "I'm relocating," Alhaji said finally. "My wife and I are moving to Canada. It's been in the works for months." Michael blinked. "Wow, congratulations, sir. Thank you. And that's why I called you here. I've decided I'm handing the entire business over to you." Michael stared, stunned. "Sir?" "The 2 branches, the staff, even the company vehicles, and—" Alhaji smiled wider. "The house in Lekki Phase 1. It's yours now." Michael couldn't speak. "I've signed the transfer papers. It's yours, free and clear. You earned it." Michael's eyes filled with tear. "Sir, I don't even know what to say." "Then don't say anything. Just keep doing what you've always done. Take care of your daughters. Take care of the name you've built." Michael stood up and shook his hand with both palms. In that moment, he wasn't just a man who had been lifted, he was a man who had risen. 2 weeks later, Michael stood in the compound of a beautiful 5-bedroom duplex. Gina ran through the hallway shouting, "Daddy, there's a bathtub," while Naomi jumped on the king-sized bed laughing. The fridge was full. The lights were always on. There was AC in every room. That night, as they all ate at the dining table for the first time, Naomi looked up and asked, "Daddy, are we rich now?" Michael smiled. "No, sweetheart, we're blessed, and we're not going back." Meanwhile, on the other side of town, tension was rising in Cynthia's apartment. Tonia had been there for nearly 3 weeks. She no longer cried. She slept in till noon, scrolled through her phone, ate without asking, and acted like she was entitled to be there. Cynthia didn't complain at first, but things had changed. Tonia left dirty plates in the sink, ignored house chores, took long calls late at night. Cynthia's patience was wearing thin. One evening, after returning from work, Cynthia found her cooking jollof rice with her last tin of tomatoes and no permission. She said nothing at first, but her silence was loud. Later that night, on a phone call with her cousin, Cynthia sighed and said, "I don't know how to chase her. I pity her, yes, but she's overstayed. She's draining me." Tonia heard it from the hallway. Her heart sank. She returned to the guest room, sat on the bed, and stared at the wall. Her pride wouldn't let her admit it, but she knew what was coming next. 3 days later, Cynthia called her into the living room. "Tonia, I've been patient, but I think it's time you go." Tonia's eyes welled up. "Please, I don't have anywhere to go." "I'm sorry, but you need to figure that out. I can't keep carrying your weight. You have 3 days. Tonia nodded slowly. She packed her things in silence. That night, Michael stood outside his mansion, watching the sunset, holding a cold glass of water. Gina and Naomi were inside, watching TV, wrapped in fluffy blankets. He closed his eyes and whispered, "Thank you, God, for this second chance." Tonia sat on a couch in Cynthia's guest room, holding her head in her hands. No home, no man, no plan. Only one door left to knock on, and it was the same one she had slammed shut. Tonia stood in front of Michael's old compound, the same one she left behind like trash. Her clothes were rumpled, her feet ached, her hope was thin. She knocked on the familiar gate, expecting to hear his voice. But instead, a young man opened and looked at her with confusion. "Yes?" "I'm looking for Michael," she said weakly. "Oh, the man who used to live here. He moved out long ago," the man said. "Big man now. He's running his own business. I heard he lives in Lekki now, mansion and all." Tonia's eyes widened. Do you know the address?" The man's wife overheard and came out. After a few questions, they gave her the details. She thanked them, holding back tears. 2 hours later, she stood at the black gate of a mansion in Lekki. This gate was tall, shiny, clean. The compound beyond looked quiet, well kept. A gardener was watering flowers. A car engine purred quietly behind the walls. She hesitated, then knocked. The gateman came out, surprised by her worn-out look. "I'm here to see Michael," she said. He narrowed his eyes. "Who should I say is asking?" "Tonia." The gateman nodded slowly. "Wait here." Inside, Michael stood in the sitting room, reviewing a guest list on his phone. His fiancée, a graceful, well-dressed woman, was beside him, arranging fabric samples for their upcoming engagement. Naomi and Gina were in the kitchen, giggling as they tasted the wedding cake samples. Then the gate man entered. "Sir, a woman is at the gate. She said her name is Tonia." Michael's hand froze. He took a deep breath. "Let her in." A1 the first. Tonia stepped into the compound with hesitation. Everything looked like a dream. Landscaped flowers, marble floors, the scent of fresh polish. She looked ahead and froze. Michael stood at the front porch, calm as ever, dressed in a white linen shirt and black trousers. Beside him was a stunning woman, clearly his fiancée, holding his hand gently. And standing on either side of them, Gina and Naomi, both glowing, both elegant, both proud. Tonia's legs trembled. "Michael," she whispered, eyes wet. "Please, I've lost everything. Cynthia kicked me out. I came to say sorry. Please, forgive me. I don't even want much, just a chance to breathe." Michael looked at her long and hard. His daughters watched silently. His fiancée didn't flinch. "Tonia," he said calmly, "I forgave you a long time ago, but I've moved on. I'm getting married." Tonia gasped. "So you're not alone?" "No, I'm not alone. I'm loved, and I'm respected." Tonia looked at the woman beside him. She was beautiful, confident, peaceful. Tonia's knees buckled. She dropped to the floor. "Please, please, I'm begging." Michael didn't move. "Stand up. You still have some dignity left. Don't lose all of it." She stood, broken. Michael continued, "I'll give you a little cash to find your footing, but that's all. You made your choice. I made mine. We're not the same people anymore." His fiancée gently squeezed his hand. Michael turned to the gateman. "Give her food and a small envelope. Then let her go." Tonia opened her mouth to speak again, but nothing came out. She looked at Gina, then Naomi, then back at Michael. Then, quietly, she turned and walked away. The gate closed behind her. And the door she once slammed in pride? It stayed shut, permanently.